I'm black. Now, let's deal with the social fact and the fact of my stating it together.
Adrian Margaret Smith Piper is a conceptual artist, art critic, philosopher, and educator. Since the 1960s, Adrian Piper's art has been a powerful medium for raising critical awareness. Piper describes her art as a catalyst for change, a means to exercise interpersonal mindfulness as a tool for political resistance. Often using herself as both subject and object of her work, Piper transforms her own body and physical presence into a site for critical intervention, challenging essentialist notions about race, gender, and identity. In 1987, Piper became the first tenured African-American woman professor in the field of philosophy. Her background in philosophy has had a profound impact on her work as an artist. Piper creates works of art whose form and content engage the viewer in what she calls the indexical present, the focus of our attention in the here and now, the everyday context in which we live, think, speak, and act. Piper was an original member of the conceptual art movement of the 1960s. Conceptual art, as defined by Piper's mentor Saul LeWitt, is an art form in which concepts or ideas of a work take precedence over traditional aesthetic and material concerns. Conceptual art posed a radical challenge to traditional Western notions of what art was, how it could be made, and how it could be presented and experienced. As a conceptual artist, Piper has produced a body of work that defies easy categorization. Her work utilizes a variety of media, including video, collage, photography, text, installations, and interactive performance. In addition to deconstructing artistic categories, Piper's work deconstructs social categories. Her approach developed as a means to confront and combat the white supremacist, capitalist, patriarchal values that dominate American society. Piper's work developed out of the political climate of the 1970s, when the legacy of the civil rights movement, the fragmentation of the Black Power movement, and the birth of the feminist movement defined an ongoing struggle for social change in America. Like many artists of the time, Piper saw a need to bring her work out of academia and the gallery system and onto the streets. While attending City College in New York, Piper conducted a series of performances by engaging in everyday activities around the city, walking, shopping, and riding the subway. She behaved normally, but altered her physical presence in unusual and provocative ways. The reactions of her unsuspecting audience revealed the ways social hierarchies are structured through physical difference. Two performances in particular raised the political concerns that would be voiced more explicitly in Piper's later work. In Catalysis 3, Piper went shopping in Bloomingdale's wearing a set of clothes covered in sticky white paint. This performance literalizes and subverts the way people who deviate from upper-middle-class white social norms are whitewashed, alienated, and ignored. The wet paint sign symbolizes the physical and social distance between Piper as the art object and her audience. It says, "Look, but don't touch." In Catalysis 4, Piper rode the New York subway dressed normally, but with a white bath towel stuffed into her mouth. Here, her gestures symbolize the way women and people of color are silenced and driven underground in a white supremacist, patriarchal society. In these performances, Piper renders visible the invisible social boundaries and hierarchies that structure our lives, transgressing them while at the same time revealing their absurdity. In another early performance series, Piper created an alter ego called the Mythic Being. She donned sunglasses, a mustache, and an afro wig to construct an image of cool black masculinity. She wore the costume out on the street and would crash white social events like gallery openings and Harvard teas in the guise of the Mythic Being. Piper disseminated the image of the Mythic Being in the form of posters and a series of ads in the Village Voice. She describes the image as a static emblem of alien confrontation. The character became a symbol of the implied threat of black masculinity to white society, and the way people respond to the other with hate and fear. Creating the Mythic Being was a way for Piper to deconstruct these oppositions, revealing the way signs of blackness and masculinity, the afro and the mustache, are part of a constructed social identity, a mythic being. While these works deal with artistically constructed ideas, much of Piper's work draws on her personal struggle for self-definition against her own socially constructed identity. Piper has African, European, and Afro-Caribbean heritage and identifies as Black. However, because of her light skin tone, Piper found that in many social contexts, she was assumed to be white. When she corrected these assumptions, she was met with reactions that were dismissive or openly hostile. Piper uses these polarizing reactions as a basis for critical intervention. For example, in her pencil drawing, Self-Portrait Exaggerating My Negroid Features, Piper uses a traditional medium to proclaim her agency in representing her black identity. The head-on view and direct gaze of the portrait challenge us to view Piper as a subject, not an object. Piper's exaggeration draws attention to the ways race and physical appearance are stereotyped, asking us to connect our mental image of blackness with Piper's individual appearance. Piper rejects the notion that she should be asked to pass for white. By announcing and celebrating her blackness, Piper counteracts the idea of blackness as a mute, distant other in relation to white society through direct confrontation. Often, Piper stages confrontation through direct engagement with her audience. For example, in another performance series, My Calling Card, No. 1, subtitled For Dinners and Cocktail Parties, was a series of impromptu reactive guerrilla performances Piper conducted at social events. As a light-skinned African American, Piper found that in predominantly white social settings, she was frequently assumed to be white, and that because of this, people often made racist remarks in her presence. When they did, Piper would distribute copies of this printed calling card. Dear friend, I am black. I am sure that you did not realize this when you made, laughed at, or agreed with that racist remark. In the past, I have attempted to alert white people to my racial identity in advance. Unfortunately, this invariably causes them to react to me as pushy, manipulative, or socially inappropriate. Therefore, my policy is to assume that white people do not make these remarks, even when they believe that there are no black people present, and to distribute this card when they do. I regret any discomfort my presence is causing you, just as I am sure you regret the discomfort your racism is causing me. By distributing the cards, Piper subtly asserted her agency in contexts where her silence would be mistaken for agreement, and her presence inadvertently co-opted in support of white supremacy. The cards are an ironic comment on standards of etiquette in a society where black voices are silenced because whiteness is assumed to be the norm. Instead of remaining silent, Piper brings herself into direct personal contact with her audience to actively challenge their presumptions about race through open dialogue. When the work is shown in a gallery space, the exhibit includes a stack of the cards for viewers to bring home and distribute themselves to initiate dialogue. By drawing attention to the way viewers engage in her work, Piper reveals the underlying power dynamics betrayed by their reactions. This is the subject of Parker's 1988 video installation, Cornered. In the video, Piper looks directly into the camera and recites a monologue in which she coolly and rationally deconstructs the viewer's reaction to her frank announcement, I'm black. By announcing her blackness, Piper transgresses the social niceties that say race doesn't matter. She deconstructs the viewer's defensive reaction to reveal the deeper issues at work, that we live in a society where whiteness is privileged and blackness is seen as a threat to social order.
Maybe you think this is just my problem and that I should deal with it by myself. But it's not just my problem. It's our problem.
Next, Piper plays her trump card. She says that studies have shown most white Americans have some black ancestry. Entrenched cultural conventions dictate that a person with black ancestry is considered black. By these standards, most self-identified white viewers are then likely to be black. So why would they choose to identify themselves as white? The answer is that they do so to gain the social and material privilege that whites enjoy in American society, merely by virtue of their skin tone. Piper's argument reveals the contradictions and double standards of social and institutional conventions historically constructed to support essentialist notions of race. That race is determined by biology, that it is manifested through physical appearance, and that we can therefore confidently classify the world into racial categories by sight alone. It is impossible to rationalize a defensive reaction to Piper's statement without coming to terms with the fact that we live in a society where white is arbitrarily valued over black, and that this socially constructed hierarchy has produced a legacy of pain and oppression for those who fell on the wrong side of the racial coin toss.
So if I choose to identify myself as black, whereas you do not, That's not just a special personal fact about me. It's a fact about us. It's our problem to solve. So, how do you propose we solve it? What are you going to do?
Only when we recognize the full implications of our public identity and the extent to which that identity is chosen for us can we begin to critically dismantle the systems of domination that propagate the superiority of whiteness, and to celebrate blackness. Through her work as an artist, Piper demands that we take social responsibility for the choices we make here and now in the indexical present.